People share their creepiest and most inexplicable stories. When my sister and I were kids, we were out front of our home, playing near the mailbox. Mom and dad were there by the window watching, and according to them, my mother turned to my father and asked him to bring us inside. He shrugged her off, but she became more urgent. He asked why it was a problem, and she suddenly panicked and actually started heading towards the front door despite being less than a week away from giving birth to our youngest sister. He stopped her and stepped outside to call us in, and we complied. Less than a minute later, a car came barreling down the street at high speed and struck our mailbox, destroying it. We would have both been killed instantly. My parents have never felt entirely comfortable talking about it. I was at a dueling piano bar with my girl for a night of laughing. This girl my age, and who I figured was her mom, kept looking at me. The night went on, and they eventually came up to me and apologized for the staring, and had decided to explain to me why. The old lady told me her daughter had taken her out to this piano bar tonight to celebrate her now deceased husband's birthday, and that I was actually a perfect match and looked exactly like her husband and was the same age for when they met decades ago. They asked me my name and age. When I told them, they both started crying as I had the same name as the husband and was the same age as when they met. They kept saying they wish they had a picture with them to show me the resemblance. The old lady and daughter asked me to please take a pic with them so they could document this and to have the pic to show the rest of family this, as nobody would believe this happened. They were pretty emotional about this happening, and the old lady almost pulled some tears out of me when she asked me to hug her, because it was like she was going back in time and was given the chance to hug her husband once again. The daughter, to her this was like seeing her father in his prime, and they were both blown away. I couldn't say no to the pic and hug, etc. The whole thing was very strange and really got me thinking about life, etc. I'm a tad emotional right now thinking about this again. In 4th or 5th grade, we stopped all of our classes for the day. 2 people came into our classroom, a man and a woman, and they didn't say why they were there or where they had come from. They handed out questionnaire booklets that seemed like standardized tests, except for the questions within them, 50 or so questions, all of them true or false format, but with really weird content. Some that I can remember were T or F, worms talk to trucks, and T or F, apples are blue. We all answered them while looking really confused, and our teachers were silent the entire time. The next days, nobody said a word about the tests. I remember asking people what they were, but nobody could recall where the people were from. We never saw them again, and no faculty of the school ever once mentioned the tests. We didn't have them the next year and had never had them before. I still have no clue what they wanted from us. I was doing an audit of a public program. I pulled a sample from something like 60,000 people. There was 12 people with the same name in the same town. I thought this was a clerical error, so I asked for backup. I found out 6 were really different people, but 6 others had the same middle initial and birthday. I asked for IDs, and they sent me 8. There was 8 people with the same first and last name, same middle initial, same birthday, born in the same area. The 2 extras were 2 people with all those similarities, but they both had died. Here is the kicker: they died on the same day. I think about this all the time. I had a dream where my dad was fishing with a man in overalls when suddenly some black smoke-like monster surged from the woods and impaled him in the heart. Woke up from that dream to a phone call from my stepmother. My father was on the operating table for a heart attack. He'd been smoking since the age of 17, and it nearly killed him at 38. He had 2 more by the age of 41. The kicker? He'd been replacing the toilet when it happened. Had his buddy over to help, a plumber. Hence the man in overalls. I still get chills thinking about it. I don't believe in ghosts, but my dad has told me about a couple of his own experiences. I can't think of a single reason why he would lie to me about it, but the craziest one he told me was from when he was about 16. He was staying the night at his best friend's house, as he had done many times before. Everyone had already gone to bed, and he was watching TV alone in the living room. Then, the TV shut off on its own, and he heard the floor creak like it does when someone walks down the hall. but nobody was there, and then he saw the seat next to him on the couch become depressed, and the TV turned back on, but instead of playing his show it started playing some old black and white cartoons with subtitles. He said at this point he was petrified and couldn't even move. Then the TV shut back off, the seat inflated, he heard steps back down the hall, and his original show he was watching came back on. When I was in middle school, cell phones weren't widespread yet, and I also didn't carry a watch, so I would often do things without knowing the time. I used to walk a mile or so to a bus stop, and I was usually the only kid that rode the bus at this time. Our school started at staggered times, and I was the only middle schooler who rode this bus at this particular time. I would leave my house at 6:50 and get to the bus stop by 7:20ish. I had gone with a watch before, so I knew the timing, and the bus would always arrive by 7:35, so I always had a bit of extra time. On this particular day, it was the dead of winter, and it was overcast out, so it was quite dark. I left the house at the same time I always did. My family was doing the same things at that time they always were, and there was no indication of anything being weird. I swear, I got to the bus stop, and time froze for a long time. Everything about my walk was normal, but while waiting on the usually busy street for my bus, no cars drove by, no pedestrians walked by, and my bus didn't come for what felt like hours. The sky did get a little brighter as the day went on, but something felt really weird. I swear I stood there for hours before. Suddenly, things returned to normal and there were cars driving by and a few people walked by. My bus pulled up, and I walked on feeling very strange. I looked at the time. It said 7:33 am. I don't get what happened. It was back in high school. We were in the middle of class listening to a lesson when my vision went pitch black for a second. I assumed the lights went off, but we had windows. Turns out everyone saw the same thing. Finally the teacher just bursted out saying, "Okay, let's just pretend we all blinked at the same time." Yep, a very memorable unexplained moment for me. When I was younger I used to sleep over my best friend's house a lot. He has an enormous old house which is also quite beautiful. One night, I woke up and went up this long stairs to the bathroom while it was all really dark, and I can't start to describe the noises I heard while I was in the bathroom. I heard steps right outside the door, heard someone scratching the door, and I thought this must be my friend pranking me, so I went and opened the door. Nothing, absolutely nothing. The noises stopped suddenly as soon as I opened it. I slept in the bathroom that night and recently told my friend, now that we are older, what happened, and he told me they had their house purged a year ago due to weird things happening, especially with his little sister. To be honest, I don't believe in ghosts nor anything of that kind, but that event was a complete horror. Was about 17 and learning to drive. Mom and I had just been to the grocery and running a few errands. It was almost dark out and we were heading home. Was first in line at a left turn stoplight in a large intersection. The turn arrow light turned green, and I just sat there. It was a very odd sensation. I knew the light was green and needed to pull through, but couldn't. It was like all motivation to move was gone, almost like when you're staring off into space, but I was fully conscious that the light had changed and turning was what I was supposed to be doing. Mom didn't say a word either, just stared at the light. About 5 seconds later, a full-size Suburban came barreling through the red light. The speed limit on the road was 45, but he had to have been doing 65 to 75. The car shook hard when he passed us. After he ran the light, I turned like normal and Mom and I both kind of woke up. Afterward, we both described the same feeling coming over us at the light. If we hadn't both been tranced out, or what have you, the Suburban would have struck us broadside. A Suburban vs a Saturn at 60 to 70 miles per hour wouldn't have been pretty. Mom would have probably been killed on impact, and I highly doubt I would have survived as well. We still talk about it every now and then. Just a weird experience. My old co-worker had a son that was in his mid-30s, and he had a son named Hunter that was 4 or 5. She said that Hunter would have bad dreams, and that he would sleep with his dad when he got scared. One night his dad woke up because he heard Hunter calling him, but he was calling him by his name, not "dad." So he went to his room and he was asleep. He woke him up and said, "Hunter, you were calling me." Is everything okay? And Hunter said, Dad, when they call you, you're not supposed to answer, and fell back asleep. He asked him about it in the morning, but he said he didn't remember saying it. I get chills when I think about it. I used to have a truck that I swore had the ghost of a dead baby in it. I used to get home late from my job as a dishwasher, and after I parked and was sitting in my driveway with the engine off, I would hear this really faint sound of a baby crying. Late at night, when it was quiet, it used to make my arm hairs stand on end. I used to get home and hop out of the car in fear of hearing it. One night I decided to sit there and just listen, try to pinpoint the sound. Eventually I discovered that it was indeed not a dead baby, but when I undid my seat buckle, the old spring of the seat belt retractor would slowly start pulling the belt in, creating a faint noise that sounded like wailing. A few years back I rented an apartment from a friend of mine. He had recently bought it and had it completely renovated. He put it up for sale, but couldn't find a buyer, so I offered to rent it in the meantime. After moving in I realized there was something wrong with the lady next door. She was about 45, but looked much older. She would sit up all night listening to Christian radio shows and talking loudly to someone. It got to the point where I couldn't sleep, so I went over to her place and asked her to keep it down. She opened her door and I got a quick peek. Her walls all had crosses painted on them in different colors, and words like Jesus and angels scribbled everywhere. The windows were painted black, letting no light in at all. It was damp, yellow-stained 50-year-old carpets, dog shit and cockroaches everywhere. No dog though. I asked her to please keep it down. She just looked at me and shut the door. Then she turned up the radio even louder. The next night I had my GF staying over. I wake up in the middle of the night and see a shadow of a person next to the bed looking at us sleeping. I think I'm hallucinating, as I usually do in the dark when I'm sleepy. But then the shadow starts talking. It's my neighbor, and she's holding something in her hand. She broke in during the night, and who knows how long she stood there. You should lock your door at night, she says, and walks out. The next morning I hear someone making strange noises below my bedroom window. It's my neighbor talking to herself in tongue. She has a plastic bag in her hand with her rotting dead dog inside. It's hot as hell outside, and I can smell death from the bag. At this point I'm scared shitless. She's obviously very insane. I go upstairs and knock on another person's door and ask what the hell is going on. The guy is as scared as me. Apparently she broke into his apartment one evening as well, while he was watching TV with his kids. He got up from the couch to get a snack, only to find her behind the couch staring at him holding a power drill. Now I know what was in her hand. At this stage I'm basically pooping myself. I call the cops and they know all about her. Apparently she is a violent schizo and she hasn't taken her meds. But they can't force her or enter her apartment /show her permission because she owns it. The only thing they can do is get her when she goes outside. I sit up for the next 2 days waiting for her to run out of cigarettes. When I hear her leave at 2 AM to go across the road to the 7-Eleven, I call the cops. They have 3 cars and a special van over in less than 2 minutes. They restrain her and throw her in the van and drive off to some institution, and in less than a minute it's like she was never there. I never see her again. Still have nightmares about her looking at me in my sleep. I'm a nighttime tour guide at an old convict prison in Australia. It's run by the government, so the tours are pretty watered down and family friendly. The tours run between like 6 and 9 on Wednesday and Friday nights, and some of the scariest shit I've ever experienced has happened there. I'm not convinced in ghosts and whatnot, but if there are, they are definitely there. Every other person who works there has their own creepy story. My scariest was when I had a group of about 30 people in the gallows one night, the room where people were hanged, and the room is made of corrugated tin. So I was there doing my bit when suddenly there was this huge bang on the roof. Everyone looked up, and a few people screamed but a lot laughed. We have a few actors that jump out on tours, so they probably thought it was that. The banging didn't stop though. It was kind of irregular at sort of like half-second intervals. Like boom, boom, boom boom, and people we getting creeped, me included, so I took the group outside. Now the roof of the room is a slanted A-frame, so if you walk back a bit you can see the outside roof. We all watched as this one bit of tin looked like it was being stomped on from the outside, moving and everything, still banging when I took the group to the next spot. We finished off the tour and a few people thought it was a joke, but it genuinely terrified me. I've got some ghost photos on my Galaxy I'll try and upload now, but I'm not very good at interneting.